You're listening to Ideal Practice, episode number 2. In this episode today, we're talking about why it's important that you give yourself permission to create a private practice that is your version of ideal. What does that even mean? Don't worry, I got you covered. I'm going to share with you 5 clarifying questions that I think will help you sort this out for yourself. You're going to like this, folks. It's going to be helpful. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Wendy Pitts-Reeves, and with over 2 decades of experience in the private practice world, I've built my 6-figure business while learning a lot of lessons the hard way. This is the first podcast that shows you how to apply the principles of energy, alignment, and strategy to build a practice that is profit-centered, but people-forward. This is the Ideal Practice Podcast. Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for coming back. I'm excited about that. I cannot wait for us to get to know each other. I'm really excited about some of the conversations that I know we're going to be having here on the show. And I couldn't think of a better way to get started than by talking about the concept of what it means to create an ideal private practice. The word ideal is a bit loaded, right? In fact, those of us who tend to be drawn to healing arts, to this kind of work, are often accused of being idealists, as if somehow that was a bad thing. I don't really get that. To me, what that means is that we believe that things can get better, that our clients can get better, that the world can get better. If we didn't believe that, we wouldn't last very long in the kind of work that we do, right? That's for sure. But here's the thing. As entrepreneurs who are at cause in our businesses, and that's a phrase you will hear me say from time to time. When I say that we are at cause, what I mean is that we own our responsibility for our own success, our response ability, our ability to respond to what happens in front of us, to what unfolds in front of us. We own it all, y'all, when we own our practice, right? Well, as entrepreneurs who are at cause, we have the freedom, and I would say the responsibility, to design a practice that really fits who we are, that works for us, as well as it does for our clients. Because here's the thing, when we do that, when our practice makes us really happy, we're going to show up as our best selves, and we're going to do our best work. The problem is, way too often, we tend to assume that we have to do things the way everyone around us does things, the way things that are sort of commonly accepted or expected among our peers. What everybody else is doing, that if you're a therapist, you tend to do what you see other therapists are doing. If you're an energy healer, you tend to do what you see other energy healers doing. But if you run your practice the way everybody else is running theirs, and if it doesn't really quite work for you, if you're not careful, that can get you to a dark place. It can take you to a place where you end up feeling exhausted, underappreciated, and broke. And I don't know about you, but that's not why I went into business, right? So I want to give you a couple of quick tips for just where to go with this. The first thing I want you to do, I want you to give yourself permission to do things your way. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you happy. Just yesterday, I was coaching someone who has a really big idea about what she wants to develop in her own practice. And as we were talking it through, she was instantly getting caught up in a fair amount of kind of worry and guilt about, what if my clients don't like this? What if other people don't like this? Whatever. And I told her, there are 5 words, the 5 most important words that you can use that are part of your business. And you will hear me say this a lot too. They are, this is how I work. This is how I work. Give yourself permission to do things your way. It will make you happy. And the second step, or the second thing I want to say about that, is I want you to take time to get clear on what your way is. And if you've got a vision or you've got a preference about something you want to do in a certain way in your practice, and for the life of you, you have no idea how to do it, that's okay. Y'all, the how is never the problem. The how will come. The problem is giving yourself permission to do what you really wanted to do anyway. So I just want to say to you, you'll figure out the how. You will. I know it. You always do. Haven't you always in the past? Yeah, of course you have. So give yourself permission to do things your way and take the time to figure out what that is. As I was thinking about this episode and about what I want to share with you today, I found myself remembering kind of a funny moment that happened to me a long time ago. So a couple of friends and I were hiking the Appalachian Trail through the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. We were out for about a week, and we were doing about a 72, 75 mile stretch of trail, which is no small deal. And on the last night, the very last night of the week, had been a pretty rough day. We were soaking wet. It had been raining hard, blowing sideways all day long. We were pretty wiped out after a week of backpacking. We got to the shelter. It was messy, cold. We were exhausted. And one of my friends that was with me stood in the middle of the shelter with her pack still on her shoulders, soaking wet. She looked like a drowned rat. And she just stood there and looked at me and she said, "I just need someone to tell me what to do." Don't we feel that way sometime? Even as a business owner, I just need someone to tell me what to do. Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do exactly, but I am going to give you some really good questions. I'm going to give you 5 clarifying questions that you can use to help yourself figure out what an ideal practice looks like for you. As we work through these, you're going to find that there are some that are like, you know what? I got this. I'm feeling pretty good about this. This is clicking. It's working for me. And then there will be a few other things where you're like, okay, so that's a little rough. That's okay. It's not exactly what I want, but it's decent. I encourage you to pay attention to that, okay? We're not aiming for decent. We're aiming for ideal, okay? So let's talk through these 5 questions. Number 1, who do you really want to see? Are you seeing clients that you really want to see? When you get up in the morning and you look at your calendar for the day, do you love the names that are showing up in your planner? It's a great feeling when that's the case. There was a time, I will admit, when back in the day when I would, if I had really difficult clients or clients that I wasn't quite that confident about how I was working with them, or where they were sort of a stretch case for me, where I was like, I think I can help them. I'm not really sure, but I'm going to try it. I think I can do it. Those kinds of clients where I was nervous about seeing them or where the stakes were really high. Y'all know these. You've had these folks. I would try to schedule them early in the week, like Monday or Tuesday, so I could get them over with. Otherwise, I'd spend all week long worrying about that, dreading those times. Not because I didn't like the people necessarily, but just because it was difficult for whatever reason. It's so much better when you wake up in the morning and you look at your calendar and you're like, oh my gosh, I get to see him today. He is such a delight to talk to. Or, oh my gosh, I get to work with that family today and I love what's happening with them. It's tough, but I can see where they're going. I'm so excited about it. So do you see who you really want to see? I'll tell you, from the very beginning as a psychotherapist, I did a better job of saying what I didn't work with than what I did. Because the truth was I would work with almost anybody around almost anything. The one thing I never did treat were folks who were struggling with any kind of an eating disorder. Now, there were times when people would tell me on the front end that was a part of what they were dealing with, and I would say, That's not really my specialty. I'm not an expert in that. There are other people in town who are better at that. Let me give you some names. And they would often say, yeah, but I really want to work with you. It's okay if that's not your thing. And when that was the case, I would sometimes say, well, we can give it a shot, but if I don't feel like I'm serving you, I need you to know I'm going to refer you out. But we can try it and kind of go from there. So I was willing to do that. But when the main presenting problem was an eating issue, I would say no, okay? That was from the beginning. Like I was clear about that from the start. I was less clear about other things. And that's just the way it goes. My practice has changed a lot over the years. And yours will too. So, who do you really want to see? And is that who is in your practice? That's question number 1. Question number 2. What kind of work really lights you up? When you look at your clients for the week and you look at your 2 o'clock on Thursday or the group you're doing on Tuesday night or the big workshop that you've got coming up in a couple of weeks, what is it that lights you up where you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. That's going to be fun. Can't wait to do that work or can't wait to see that person. What makes you crazy happy because it is so fulfilling? As I was thinking about this, I was thinking about a colleague of mine that I adore. Her name is Sarah McNamara. If you are local to me in East Tennessee, you may know her. Her practice is in Knoxville. I've watched Sarah grow a lot over the last few years. And one of the things that made a huge difference for her as she got her practice off the ground was she got very clear about what kind of work really lights her up. And in particular, her passion is around helping women who, and this is the way she puts it on her website, women who are on the, quote, often bumpy, often painful journey to motherhood, or mamas in the thick of motherhood. She works with women around birth trauma, around pregnancy challenges, around adoption, foster care, you name it, just about anything that has to do with becoming a mom. She really cares about that. She's really good at it. And I have watched her grow and expand and become an even better clinician as she gave herself permission to work with a population that is ideal for her. See how that works? So what kind of work really lights you up? It doesn't have to be one thing. It doesn't have to be one population. It doesn't matter to me. What makes you happy? Okay? What kind of work really lights you up? That's question number 2. And if you're not sure, think about the folks that you're working with now. Which ones are the most fun? Which ones, even if they're hard, even if they're challenging, even if sometimes they're really, really difficult, but you're enjoying it. What do those situations have in common? See if you can't figure that out. Question number 3 is a little bit simpler. This is a little bit more nuts and bolts. And that is, where, when, and how do you want to work? I was coaching, was it last year? I was working with a woman in the Northeast who had a really full private practice, was working with all kinds of folks. And she actually was an online therapist way before being online was a cool thing. But her hours were also all over the place. When I first met her, she was seeing folks on the weekends, in the evenings, in the mornings, in the middle after the afternoon, all kinds of times, right? And of course, that didn't work very well. So let's start with your hours. Do you do best early in the morning? Do you do best in the evening? What kind of time schedule works best for you? Do you like seeing people back to back? Or would you rather have an hour in between or half an hour in between? What kind of schedule works with your energy? All right. Where do you want to work? Do you want to work in an office? In a physical office that's out and about in town somewhere? Do you want to work online? Do you want to do some version of those two? And let me give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about here. My very first business partner, her name was Annie. She was a clinical psychologist who did a lot of work with teenagers. Actually, we had that in common. We both really loved teens. a big part of her practice was working specifically with adolescent girls. But there came a time when she made the decision as a business owner of her own practice to stop seeing anybody after 2:00 in the afternoon because her own kids at that point were in school and she wanted to be home when they got home. That's what an ideal practice is, right? Developing your practice to work for you. And when she made that decision that she was going to stop seeing people after 2 and her primary practice was around teens, I actually didn't think that was going to work. What I thought would happen was that her practice would change, that her clients, the type of clients that she worked with would change. But it didn't, not really. She found a way to make it work for the kids that she was working with. And another way of looking at that is the kids that really wanted to see her found a way to make it work, right? So that was one example. And then there was another partner of mine, actually, at some point, who was working with me. She was part of my group practice, and the time came when she decided to move her practice home. She had a good setup. She had moved to a different house where the parking was good, the neighborhood was good, there was privacy, the energy was good. There were a lot of benefits in her mind to seeing people at her home. She had a really good setup that made it work for her. I wouldn't have wanted to do that. That's not something that has ever been appealing to me. But it was for her. And she's never looked back. So give yourself some time to think about this. What hours do you want to work? What days do you want to work? Okay. Where, when, those kinds of things. All right. Question number 4. What feels like good money to you? What feels like fair payment, appropriate payment? How much money do you want to make? Whatever that number is you've got in your mind, I want to make this much an hour. I want to make this much a year. Bump it up at least 25%, maybe 50, maybe double it. Because I'm 99% sure that most of you, whatever number you've come up with, is too low. Not all of you. There's an exception to that here and there. But I know you guys, most of the time, your numbers are going to be too low. But I want you to think about what feels right to you. What feels fair? What feels like an honorable representation of the good that you do? I had a colleague one time who charged $200 an hour for a court appearance back when the going rate was more like 100, 110, 120. I thought that was crazy. And she would also charge for the whole day. Like if you needed her to come and testify, she was willing to do that, but you had to agree to pay for a full day of her time because she essentially had to be on call because you never knew when you were going to be called to the court or not. So I thought that was kind of crazy, but the kind of work she did involved a lot of court work and she was good at it. She came at it from a place of integrity. She really served the clients and families that she worked with. So she got paid that, right? And then there are those who, among the psychotherapy world that I've known who never took insurance in their practice. Like from the beginning, they just didn't do it. They were paid full fee from the beginning all along. That blew my mind the first time I saw it. Absolutely blew my mind. Not so much anymore, but it did in the beginning. And then I've seen healers who will tell you that their going rate for their work is like, I don't know, $150 for an hour or, $200 for an hour and a half. But when you dig into it, they're really getting as little as like $40, $50, $60 for a session for what they do for lots of different reasons. So I want you to think regardless of where you are right now, here's what I'm charging, but here's what I'd like to charge, or here's what would actually feel more respectful for me. I just don't know how to do it. Or, if you feel guilty about it, or you feel stressed about it, or you've got the mindset stuff is coming up, don't worry about that. That's okay. That just shows that there's room for growth here. But an ideal practice, y'all, pays you well. Pays you a fair and honorable rate that accurately reflects the good that you do. All right, and then the last question, number 5, what is your why? How are you making a difference? I know you guys, if you don't feel like you're making a difference in the lives of those you serve, you won't stick with this because that's what feeds you. I know it. You don't actually care about the money. You don't even care too much about the other things I've said, like where you work or how often you work or what kind of stuff you're doing. I know that what you care about is making a difference. I get that. I do too. However, I do want you to kind of like give yourself a moment to look at the work that you're doing and go, am I making the difference I want to make? Is there something about the work that I'm doing that this kind of goes back to the lights you up question. This is where I can see that I'm making a difference and I want more of that. I want to push that more, promote that more. Maybe I want to learn that skill at a deeper level. Maybe I want to build that into my practice in a bigger way. Yeah, and I think I'll tell you a little story about a way that I did that. So as I have thought about, I've done a lot of things in my life. My business has changed a lot in different ways over the years. My practice has changed. But there has been one theme that ties together pretty much everything I've ever done. And that is, first and foremost, I get really, really excited when I can get people to do things that they think they can't do. When I can get you to do something that makes you proud, I cry. Yeah, I do. So as a therapist, I'm a pushy therapist. I challenge people with love, gently, not inappropriately, but I am known for kind of pushing folks to do a little bit more than they think they can do. There was a time when I was really exploring lots of different things in my practice, and I worked with a woman who was I want to say she's in midlife. I want to say late 40s, early 50s. And at this particular point in her life, she was taking care of an elderly parent in her home. And this particular parent was quite demanding, quite difficult to take care of. I can't remember now if Alzheimer's or dementia was involved. I just remember that my client was exhausted because she was the sole and primary caregiver for this parent. She had a full-time job. When she got off work every day, which I think was around 4, she went straight home to take care of this parent. And I don't remember now how she dealt with things during the day. I don't remember that. I just remember that she worked and she went home where she basically did her second shift, right? And that was her whole life. So by the time she got to me, she was understandably exhausted, depressed, overwhelmed, trapped with guilt and feeling bad because she loved this parent and yet she had no life, right? And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. A lot of us can relate to that. But I wanted to get a little daylight in there and just help her begin to, in the simplest, smallest way, start to build a life back for herself a little bit. And I just kind of wanted to poke at this idea that she had to be the 100% caregiver all the time for this parent. So when I first started working with her, I just proposed the idea. I said, would it be possible, do you think, when you go home, if on your way home you stopped at a coffee shop, let's say Panera, and had a coffee or a cup of tea or whatever your particular favorite beverage is, and maybe just gave yourself a few minutes to read the paper. Just a little bit of a break in between your job during the day and your job at home at night. Just, 30 minutes on your way home, a little bit of a break. And when we first got started, she told me there was no way she could do that. This parent would not be able to tolerate it. Whatever kind of, I honestly don't remember who was taking care of this person during the day, but whatever it was, she felt like she had to hurry up and get home. So that's where we started. But eventually, I was able to convince her to begin testing that idea over time. And to make this long story short, about 6 months into our work together, she had made enough progress and had gone far enough that I really started to up the ante. And I asked her, I said, have you ever taken a trip by yourself? Have you ever gone anywhere by yourself just for fun? Well, it turns out that she actually had back in the day when she was younger. She had traveled a lot all over the US, all over Europe even. But she'd lost touch with that part of herself as she'd gotten older, as the obligations of life had weighed her down. So there was a time, yes, when travel was a big part of her experience, but not anymore. And I said, what would happen if you gave yourself permission to just take a little trip? Maybe a weekend, maybe a long weekend. Doesn't have to be far. Maybe a city 2 or 3 hours away. Whatever, not too far. Now, this was a long way from, can you stop at Panera and get a cup of coffee on your way home? So that's how far we had come, that it was even conceivable that this could happen. And so I began to kind of sort of plant that seed and begin to kind of poke around on that a little bit and just sort of explore that as kind of a fun thing to think about. Possibilities, right? Ideal. In an ideal world, what if you could take a little trip by yourself? Well, y'all, she did. Here's the thing. She eventually, on her own, made the decision to actually go see a friend that lived in a city that was 7 hours away by car. And I won't go into all of it now because this is one of my favorite stories, and there's a really good chance I'll tell it again later. But she had to do a lot to make this work. There were tons of obstacles she had to overcome, left, right, and center. It was astonishing. But by the time we'd gone to this point, she had set her intentions, and she was strong enough, clear enough, determined enough that one by one, she found her way through, around, under, over those obstacles. And by golly, she did it. She took a trip for a full week away by herself to see a friend in person that she hadn't seen in over a decade. It turned out to be a life-changing experience. I love that story because that's my why. My why is to help others do things they thought they couldn't do and create a life, or in this case, a business that they never thought they could create. That's why I get so excited about you all. When I see you standing in your power, owning your authority, charging what you're worth, building an ideal practice that really is perfect for you. Perfect for you. So I've got a little exercise for you that I want to suggest that in terms of kind of like where to go with this. Here's what I want to encourage you to do. I want you to set aside, let's say, a good 30 minutes. Maybe you want to go to Panera. And get yourself a notepad and work your way through these 5 clarifying questions. Remember again what they are. Who do you really want to see? What kind of work really lights you up? Where, when, and how do you want to serve your clients? What feels like good money to you? What kind of money do you want to make? What do you want to charge? And what is your big why? What is the thing, that the thread that goes through it all that makes it worth it to you? What is it that makes you know, like, this is what I was born for, right? I want you to think about those questions and how they fit or don't fit in your practice as it is right now. As you do this, you will find some things you love. When you do, celebrate that. I love the people I'm seeing right now. I love the hours that I'm working right now. I feel really good about my pricing right now. Great. Take a moment, give yourself a high five, pat yourself on the back. Yeah, it's fine. I love that. And if you find something that isn't so ideal, that's fine too, because that's information that you can use. So use that and start to make a plan for how you can change it. See what you come up with. And then let's go from there. I think you'll like it. And I think you then will be well on your way to an ideal practice. There you go. Thanks, everybody. And that, my friends, is a wrap. I'm so glad you guys are here. Thank you so much for listening. You guys are the absolute best. If you've enjoyed this episode, tell a friend about it. Share it with a colleague. And don't forget to click subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a single thing coming up. I got lots of good stuff in store for you. I hope you have an awesome week, and I will see you next time. Bye now.